Have you ever opened your eyes in the morning only to feel like you are already behind on life before you even get out of bed? Your phone is waiting with dozens of notifications, a silent reminder that the world has been moving without you. A list of unfinished tasks and mistakes drifts into your head before your feet even touch the floor. It is as if a shadowy voice whispers on repeat that you are not enough, that you have to catch up, that peace is always just one step further than where you are now. This is not an unusual story. It is the reality of modern life in cities across America, Canada, and Europe, where ambition and pressure follow us from dawn to midnight. We strive for better careers, healthier bodies, perfect relationships, more likes, more followers, more everything. And yet the moment we reach one milestone, the goalpost shifts further away. You celebrate the promotion today, but tomorrow you wake up already chasing the next title. You post a picture online and feel a rush of approval, only to sense the emptiness when the numbers are not as high as you imagined. Happiness feels conditional, like a finish line that keeps moving the closer you run toward it. In this endless chase, the mind becomes like a computer browser, with too many tabs open at once. Each thought flashes and demands attention. Each worry feels urgent, but instead of clarity, all you see is clutter. The inner critic grows louder in this chaos, replaying past mistakes and predicting future failures. It insists that peace and self-worth are on the other side of accomplishment, when in truth, they slip further away every time we believe that promise. What if the problem is not that you are broken or incapable, but that you have been taught to look for peace in all the wrong places? What if the stillness you crave is not waiting at the end of achievement, but has been quietly present? Underneath the noise all along, imagine for a moment that your thoughts are clouds and your true self is the sky. Clouds move, they gather, they scatter, sometimes heavy with storms, sometimes soft and thin. But the sky itself does not disappear. It holds them without resistance. In the same way, you are not the storm of thoughts racing through your mind. You are the awareness that notices them, the vast and steady space behind them. This shift may sound simple, yet it changes everything. Because when you no longer identify with the critic, the doubt, or the endless list of what you must become, you stop feeding the cycle that keeps you trapped. You begin to sense that freedom is not a reward waiting in the future, but a birthright available in the present. And from this space, real transformation begins. It is tempting to believe that the miracle of modern technology has solved the ancient problem of loneliness. After all, never before in history have human beings been so reachable, so networked, so instantly informed. With a single swipe on a phone screen, you can see the face of a friend who lives thousands of miles away. With a short message, you can express joy, anger, sadness, or excitement, and have someone respond within seconds. On the surface, this looks like progress, a triumph of connection. Yet beneath the glow of screens, millions across North America and Europe quietly admit to feeling more isolated, more anxious, and more restless than any generation before. Think of the ritual that has become almost universal. You wake up, turn off the alarm, and before your eyes fully adjust to the morning light, you scroll through endless updates. Emails, waiting headlines, shouting bad news, posts from strangers and acquaintances alike. Some polished, some bitter, all demanding space in your already crowded mind. This is not a conscious choice anymore. It has become a reflex. And with that reflex comes a creeping sense that you are never caught up, never fully present, never enough. The irony is sharp. The devices that promised freedom and efficiency often feel like chains. The constant buzz of notifications is like a tap on the shoulder you can never ignore. Each alert claims importance, yet most are meaningless. Still, the body reacts with small jolts of stress each time. Over the course of a day, these jolts accumulate. Shoulders tighten, breathing shortens, sleep becomes shallow. The nervous system lives in a state of permanent readiness, as if danger could strike at any moment. And the strange part is that this danger is only a collection of numbers, symbols, and glowing pixels. Researchers have started to document this paradox. Countries that score highest in wealth and digital connectivity often report lower levels of contentment. The United States, the United Kingdom, and Canada, once considered beacons of prosperity, now rank lower on global measures of happiness than expected. Young adults who should feel most excited about the future often describe themselves as exhausted before life has even begun. They are surrounded by voices, yet starved for genuine listening. They are constantly online, yet secretly longing for silence. Part of this emptiness comes from the culture of comparison that thrives on social media. Every scroll becomes a measurement of self-worth. You see a colleague announcing a promotion, a neighbor sharing photos from a vacation, a stranger presenting a perfect body or a flawless lifestyle. Each image plants a subtle suggestion you are behind. You have not achieved enough. Your life is smaller, less worthy, less visible. And because the stream never ends, the feeling of falling short never ends either. The finish line of happiness once again moves further away. It is important to notice how cleverly designed this system island. The platforms are built to keep you hooked, rewarding you with small bursts of dopamine for every like, every comment, every new follower. At first this feels thrilling, but soon the brain adapts and needs more. The same number that once brought excitement now feels ordinary, so you chase a higher count. What started as connection turns into addiction. You are not communicating with friends anymore, you are competing with an algorithm that always asks for more of your attention. The mind, under these conditions, begins to lose its natural rhythm. Just as the body needs cycles of activity and rest, the mind needs spaces of stillness to integrate experiences. But when stimulation is constant, integration never comes. Thoughts pile on top of one another like cars in a traffic jam. The result is not clarity, but congestion. You may know more facts than ever, but you feel less sure of who you are and what truly matters. The digital world keeps you informed, but does not necessarily make you wise. Consider the difference between conversation and consumption. In conversation, there is a pause, a give and take, a moment to absorb meaning. In consumption, there is no pause. The feed keeps flowing whether you are ready or not. Many people across Western societies report feeling mentally full, yet spiritually empty. They have consumed so much information that they can no longer taste the meaning of any of it. It is like eating meal after meal without ever digesting. The stomach expands, the body weakens, and the hunger remains unsatisfied. What is most troubling is how this state of emptiness becomes normalized. Ask a group of young professionals in Toronto, London, or Los Angeles about their daily lives, and many will laugh about being constantly tired, constantly distracted, constantly overwhelmed. They treat it as the new normal. But what if normal is not the same as healthy? What if this state of endless stimulation is actually robbing us of the very freedom technology promised to deliver? The good news is that awareness is the first step toward change. When you recognize the pattern, you begin to create a small space between yourself and the machine. That space is powerful. It is the place where choice returns. Instead of reacting instantly to every notification, you might notice the impulse, take a breath, and decide whether this moment truly needs your attention. This simple pause interrupts the cycle of automatic reaction. It reminds you that you are not the servant of your device, you are the one holding it. Some people experiment with digital fasts, turning off notifications, leaving their phone in another room for a few hours, or even taking weekends offline. At first, this feels uncomfortable, like withdrawal from a substance. You may feel restless, even anxious, as if something important is being missed. But then slowly, a new sensation emerges. The mind begins to settle. The nervous system softens. The silence that once felt unbearable starts to feel nourishing. In that silence, you notice details of life that were drowned out before the warmth of sunlight on your skin. The sound of your own breath. The quiet joy of being fully present in a conversation without glancing at a screen. This is not about rejecting technology altogether. That is neither realistic nor necessary. It is about shifting the relationship from compulsion to conscious use. When you no longer measure your worth by numbers on a screen, you free yourself from the cycle of endless comparison. When you no longer allow every vibration to dictate your mood, you begin to reclaim authority over your own attention. And attention is life. Where you place it shapes the quality of your days. Imagine if even a small percentage of people in New York, Paris, or Vancouver chose to relate differently to their devices. The collective atmosphere would change. Instead of streets filled with bowed heads staring into phones, you would see more faces lifted, more eyes meeting more genuine exchanges. Instead of conversations interrupted by constant buzzing, you would hear laughter, uninterrupted stories shared without distraction. The possibility of such a shift is real, but it begins with individuals choosing to step out of the trance of constant connection and rediscover the richness of presence. The digital world is not evil. It is a tool, powerful and neutral. But a tool can either build or destroy depending on how it is used. At this moment in history, many people feel used by their tools rather than empowered by them. The invitation is simple yet radical. Remember that life happens here, in your body, in your breath, in your direct experience, not in the endless feed. When you return to this truth, you discover that the emptiness is not a curse but a signal. It is the soul reminding you that you cannot substitute real connection with endless scrolling. True connection requires space. It requires attention. It requires the courage to put the phone down and be fully alive in the unedited, imperfect, irreplaceable present moment. When we look closely at the way modern life unfolds, a striking pattern emerges. We are always waiting for the next achievement, the next purchase, the next relationship, the next season of life, as if happiness is hiding just around the corner. It is a game of postponement, and almost everyone plays it. You tell yourself that once you graduate, once you secure the job, once you buy the house, once you fall in love, once you earn enough money, then finally you will feel complete. Yet each time the goal is reached, the satisfaction fades more quickly than expected. Soon a new condition appears, another promise whispered by the mind. You will be happy when. This cycle is not new. The Buddha described it more than 2,000 years ago when he spoke about craving and dissatisfaction. He observed that desire is like a fire. It burns brightly, it consumes everything in its path, and even after it has been fed, it continues to hunger for more. Modern psychology confirms the same truth in what is called the hedonic treadmill. People adapt rapidly to positive changes. A raise in salary excites you for a few weeks, then becomes the new baseline. A new phone feels miraculous at first, then ordinary after a month. The treadmill keeps moving, and no matter how fast you run, you remain in the same place of wanting more. In North America and Europe, this treadmill is disguised as progress. Societies celebrate growth, expansion, accumulation, and achievement. Advertisements promise fulfillment with the next purchase. Career culture promises meaning through endless striving. Social media promises validation through numbers and attention. The message is relentless. You are not enough as you are, but you will be once you obtain what is missing. Yet the finish line never arrives. Instead of freedom, you are caught in a trap of conditional happiness. Consider the story of a young professional in New York. She works long hours, earns promotions, and moves into a bigger apartment each year. Her social feed glows with curated snapshots of her success. Friends admire her discipline, but alone at night she feels restless. The dream job is never quite dreamlike. The apartment, though larger, still feels empty, and the compliments on her achievements only make her feel more pressure to maintain an image. She thought happiness would come once she proved herself, yet now she fears it might never come at all. Her story is not rare. It is echoed in offices in London, in tech hubs in Berlin, in universities across Toronto and Montreal. The trap is subtle because each achievement does provide a spark of joy. The promotion, the compliment, the purchase of a car or a home, these moments genuinely feel good. The problem is not the joy itself, but the belief that it will last, or that it will solve the deeper unease inside. Like a sugar rush, the sweetness fades and leaves you hungrier than before. The craving for permanence in a world of impermanence is the root of suffering. Buddhist teachings often use metaphors to illuminate this point. One image describes people licking honey from a sharp blade. The sweetness is real but comes with inevitable injury. Another story speaks of a thirsty man who drinks salt water from the sea. The more he drinks, the thirstier he becomes. These images resonate with modern experience. The honey could be the constant praise you seek online, delicious for a moment, but cutting your sense of self-worth. The salt water could be the cycle of consumerism, giving short bursts of pleasure while deepening your dissatisfaction. There is also a cultural layer that intensifies this trap. In Western societies, the individual is taught to measure success by comparison. Your value is often tied to being better than someone else, having more, moving faster. This competitive frame makes happiness feel like a scarce resource, something to be won rather than something to be lived. If your neighbor has more, you feel less, even if your life is objectively abundant. The trap of conditional happiness thrives on this mindset of comparison, feeding insecurity while promising relief just one step ahead. but the truth is liberating once seen clearly. Happiness that depends on external conditions will always be fragile. Conditions change, health fluctuates, relationships evolve, money comes and goes. If joy depends on circumstances beyond your control, life will always feel unstable. The alternative is to discover a form of well-being that does not rely on the next achievement or the next possession. This is not a theory, but a practice, and countless spiritual traditions, including Zen, have pointed toward it. One way to glimpse this freedom is to observe ordinary moments. Imagine sipping a cup of tea on a quiet morning. If you are present, the warmth, the taste, the simplicity is complete in itself. You are not waiting for something else to make the moment better. You are not measuring it against anyone else's experience. For those few minutes, happiness is unconditional. The tea is enough, the moment is enough, you are enough. This may sound small, but it carries profound implications. If happiness can be tasted in an ordinary sip of tea, it means it is not locked away in future achievements. It is accessible here and now when the mind stops insisting that something more is needed. From this perspective, the trap of conditional happiness is not a life sentence but a misunderstanding. We keep searching outside for what is already present inside. Another way to explore this is through reflection. Ask yourself, what goals did I once believe would change everything for me? Perhaps it was entering college, falling in love, getting a certain job, moving to a certain city. Remember how important it felt, how convinced you were that life would be perfect once it happened. Now notice what actually occurred. The event may have been meaningful, but did it eliminate insecurity forever? Did it end the restless search? Likely not. This realization is not meant to bring despair, but clarity. If the formula has failed again and again, maybe it is time to question the formula itself. The mind resists this conclusion because it thrives on pursuit. Desire gives the ego a sense of direction, a sense of purpose. Without it, the ego fears emptiness. But the emptiness it fears is actually spaciousness, the open field where authentic peace can grow. In Zen, this is sometimes described as the joy of nothing to gain. When you stop chasing, you begin to live. When you stop postponing, you begin to arrive. Of course, this does not mean abandoning all goals or refusing to work for improvement. It means shifting the foundation from which you live. You still study, work, create and build, but not as a desperate attempt to fill a hole inside. Instead, you act from a sense of completeness, letting achievements become expressions of joy rather than conditions for joy. This shift transforms the quality of life. Success no longer feels like a lifeline. It becomes a bonus, a natural outcome of living fully, rather than a requirement for being worthy. The trap of conditional happiness loses its grip the moment you see it for what it is. Awareness itself is the key. Once you recognize the pattern, each promise of future fulfillment begins to look suspicious. The mind whispers, "You will be happy when," and you respond, "I can be happy now." This simple recognition, repeated again and again, weakens the cycle. Slowly, the treadmill slows. The endless chase gives way to stillness. And in that stillness, you discover the kind of freedom no achievement can grant, and no loss can take away. In the previous section, we explored how happiness becomes conditional when we believe it must be earned by chasing the next milestone. Now let us turn to the tool that magnifies this illusion more than anything else in modern life, the smartphone. For many in America, Canada, and across Europe, the phone is the last object they touch before sleep and the first object they touch upon waking. It has become an extension of identity, a constant companion, and for some, almost a second self. But what if this companion is not a faithful friend but a distorted mirror, one that reflects a warped version of who you are? A mirror, when clean and balanced, shows you reality as it is. You look into it and recognize your face. But imagine a mirror bent and cracked, exaggerating some features while shrinking others. This is the effect of the digital mirror. Your phone presents fragments of your life, images, carefully chosen words, edited and filtered, and reflects them back to you as if they were the whole truth. Over time, you begin to measure yourself not by your lived experience, but by this distorted reflection. Think of the hours spent scrolling through feeds. Each scroll is like standing before this mirror and asking silently, "Am I enough?" The answers come in the form of likes, comments, and numbers. When the numbers are high, you feel taller, brighter, more confident. When they are low, you feel smaller, invisible, perhaps even ashamed. This constant fluctuation destabilizes your sense of self. It is as if your identity has been outsourced to an audience that does not even know you deeply. The phone also mirrors comparison more intensely than any physical mirror ever could. It does not only reflect you back to yourself, but places your reflection beside countless others. You see images of people who appear richer, happier, thinner, stronger, more successful. The comparison is instant. Without realizing it, you are no longer looking at yourself in a vacuum, but through a distorted scale where you always seem less than someone else. This is not accidental. The very architecture of these platforms is designed to exploit the human tendency to compare. Consider a young man in Toronto who opens his phone after a long day of work. He sees an acquaintance posting vacation photos from Italy, a colleague announcing a new promotion, and a fitness influencer sharing perfect abs. In comparison, his own life feels dull. It does not matter that his day was meaningful or that he provided well for his family. The distorted mirror tells him he is behind, and so he believes it, forgetting that the mirror is bent. The most dangerous aspect of this distorted mirror is its ability to whisper lies so subtly that they feel like your own thoughts. You may believe you are failing when in truth you are simply measuring yourself against illusions. You may believe you are unattractive when in truth the images you compare yourself to are filtered, posed, and sometimes digitally altered. You may believe your life is too small when in truth the people you envy are often presenting highlight reels while hiding their struggles. The mirror does not tell you this. It only shows you what keeps you hooked. Psychologists warn that repeated exposure to these distorted reflections reshapes the brain. Neural pathways strengthen around feelings of inadequacy and craving for validation. Over time, this becomes habitual. Even when you know intellectually that the images are not real, the emotional response persists. The body reacts with tightness in the chest. The stomach sinks, the mind spins. It is not simply an idea that you are not enough, it is a felt experience reinforced by the distorted mirror dozens or even hundreds of times each day. Yet there is another way to see. Imagine placing the phone down for a moment and turning instead to a real mirror. You stand before it with no filter, no editing, no audience. At first, this might feel uncomfortable. You may notice lines, scars, imperfections. But if you stay long enough, something shifts. Behind the surface details, you begin to see life itself, the resilience in your eyes, the quiet story etched into your features. This reflection, though less glamorous, is more honest. It is not distorted by algorithms. It is you, raw and unfiltered. Zen teachers often speak about mirrors. They use the metaphor of a clear mirror that simply reflects without judgment. In Zen practice, the invitation is to polish the mirror of awareness, to see life as it is, rather than through distortion. Applied to the digital age, this means noticing when the phone acts as a crooked mirror and choosing instead to return to direct experience. The unfiltered moment, a conversation with a friend, the sound of rain, the sensation of breathing is the clearest reflection of self. This does not mean abandoning technology completely. The phone can be a helpful tool when used consciously. It can connect families across continents, provide vital information, and even spread messages of compassion and wisdom. But the difference between a tool and a trap is awareness. A hammer builds when guided by skilled hands, but it destroys when swung wildly. The phone builds connection when used with intention, but it distorts the self when used unconsciously. Practical steps can help restore balance. One is to set boundaries with the mirror. Decide certain times when the phone is put away, especially at night and early morning when the mind is most vulnerable. Another is to curate your digital environment, following accounts that inspire truth and unfollowing those that trigger constant comparison. Most importantly, practice pausing before you pick up the device. Ask yourself, am I seeking connection or am I seeking validation? The first leads to nourishment. The second feeds the distorted mirror. Stories of people reclaiming their lives from the mirror are inspiring. A teacher in London deleted social media for a month and reported that while the first week was full of restlessness, by the second week she began to feel lighter. A student in Montreal silenced notifications for a semester and discovered he could finally read books with focus again. A father in California started leaving his phone in another room during family dinners and noticed his children's laughter sounded clearer than it had in years. These are small acts, yet they break the spell of distortion. Ultimately, the mirror you choose determines the story you believe about yourself. If you rely on the distorted mirror of the phone, you will always feel not enough because the design ensures it. If you return to the clear mirror of direct experience, you begin to remember a different truth. That you are already complete. That your value does not fluctuate with numbers. That life is richer when seen through your own eyes, rather than through the screen of comparison. The phone as a distorted mirror is not an enemy to be destroyed, but a reminder to be mindful. Each time you hold it, you have a choice to lose yourself in distortion or to return to clarity. With practice, the mirror becomes less powerful, its lies grow quieter, and in the silence that follows, you discover a reflection more authentic than any filter could ever create. If the phone acts as a distorted mirror of the mind, the body often becomes the silent stage where this distortion is played out. Our muscles, our breath, our posture, even our digestion are constantly reflecting the inner state of the psyche. When the mind is restless, the body cannot hide it for long. It whispers at first through subtle signals, tightness in the shoulders, shallow breathing, fatigue that lingers even after rest. Over time, these whispers turn into shouts. Headaches, insomnia, digestive troubles, back pain, and sudden bursts of anxiety are not random curses. They are the body's way of crying for help. In North America and Europe, people often view the body as a machine. If it breaks down, the common response is to fix the symptom quickly, medicate the discomfort, and keep moving. But the body is not just a machine, it is also a messenger. Pain is its language. Stress is its alarm system. When ignored, the alarms grow louder. When listened to, they point toward the deeper imbalance. Consider the most common posture of our digital era: hunched shoulders, head bent forward, eyes locked on a glowing rectangle. This posture sends a powerful signal to the nervous system. It mimics the stance of submission, of bracing against attack. Muscles stay tight as if preparing to defend. Breath becomes shallow because the chest is compressed. Over the course of hours, then years, the body learns to live in a state of near constant vigilance. The result is a nervous system stuck in fight or flight, even in moments of safety. This explains why many people feel exhausted at the end of a day spent mostly sitting. It is not physical labor that drains them, but the constant micro-tension of living in defense mode. Jaw clenched, stomach, tight heart quickened at each notification. The body is acting as if a predator is near, even though the only trigger is an email or a message. The cost is enormous. Immune function weakens, sleep is disrupted, mood becomes unstable. The metaphor of a phone vibrating endlessly captures this state well. Imagine a device that never stops buzzing day and night, whether the message is urgent or not. Eventually, the battery dies. The human body is similar. When the inner vibration of stress never pauses, energy depletes. Unlike a phone, however, you cannot simply swap out the battery. You must learn how to let the system settle, how to allow silence to return. The tragedy is that many in Western societies have grown so accustomed to these stress signals that they mistake them for normal. Ask a group of young professionals in Berlin, New York, or London about their health, and many will joke about constant tension, headaches, or insomnia as if it is simply part of adulthood. But normal is not the same as healthy. The body crying for help should not be ignored just because everyone else is ignoring their own cries. There is wisdom in the way the body speaks. For example, notice how anxiety often shows up as rapid heartbeat, sweaty palms, shallow breath. These sensations are not random. They are the body's preparation for danger. But when danger is not real, when it is only imagined in the mind, the body still reacts. Over time, this mismatch between imagined threats and physical response becomes exhausting. The body is not built to live in permanent alert. It is built to respond and then return to calm. Zen teachings emphasize this natural rhythm. Inhale, exhale. Tension, release. Life flows in cycles. When the cycles are interrupted, suffering follows. One way to hear the body's cry is through mindful awareness of breath. The breath is a bridge between conscious and unconscious processes. You cannot stop your heartbeat by will, but you can influence your breath. When you choose to breathe deeply and slowly, the nervous system receives a message of safety. Shoulders drop, muscles soften, the mind begins to quiet. This simple act is not trivial. It is the beginning of breaking the loop of constant stress. Stories of healing often begin when someone finally listens to the body. A lawyer in Chicago experienced chronic back pain for years despite treatments and therapy. Nothing worked until he realized the pain intensified during periods of extreme overwork. By practicing meditation and adjusting his lifestyle, the pain began to fade. A teacher in Paris suffered from insomnia that no medication could fix. Only when she started a daily breathing practice and reduced screen use before bed did sleep return. In each case, the body had been crying for help long before, but the message was drowned out by the noise of daily demands. The body also stores unprocessed emotions. Anger, grief, fear, and shame do not simply vanish when ignored. They find a home in muscle tension, in digestive knots, in migraines that return at predictable times. Western medicine is beginning to acknowledge what many spiritual traditions have known for centuries: the body remembers. To heal, you cannot simply silence the symptoms. You must address the story behind them. Zen practice provides a different relationship with the body. Instead of treating it as an obstacle or a tool, it treats it as a partner. Sitting in meditation is not about escaping the body, but returning to it. The stillness of posture, the steady rhythm of breath, the awareness of sensations, all of these are ways of hearing the body's voice more clearly. Over time, practitioners discover that the body is not against them. It is always working to return them to balance. The problem is not the body's failure, but the mind's refusal to listen. If we listen, the body's cries become guidance rather than punishment. A headache may be a reminder to rest the eyes and mind. Stomach pain may be a sign of unspoken tension. Shallow breath may be a call to slow down. These are not signs of weakness. They are invitations to care for ourselves more deeply. Ignoring them leads to collapse. Honoring them leads to healing. In cities across America and Europe, the culture often praises productivity at any cost. People pride themselves on surviving, with little sleep, on working through illness, on ignoring pain. But beneath this pride lies fragility. A society that silences the cries of its own body eventually faces collective burnout. Rising levels of anxiety, depression, and chronic illness are proof of this imbalance. The path forward is not to push harder, but to pause and listen. Reconnecting with the body does not require elaborate rituals. It can begin with small choices. Taking a walk without headphones, pausing between meetings to breathe, lying down and simply noticing where tension is held, drinking water slowly instead of rushing. These actions may seem minor, yet they signal to the body that you are listening, that its cries matter. Over time, this builds trust between mind and body, and the nervous system begins to settle. When the body is heard, something profound happens. The endless chase of conditional happiness loses some of its grip. The distorted mirror of the phone becomes less convincing, because the body anchors you in reality. The sensation of breath, the beat of the heart, the rhythm of walking, these cannot be faked or filtered. They are proof that life is happening now, and when you meet life here in the body, you begin to find the peace that all the striving failed to deliver. When the body cries for help and the mind refuses to listen, the result is often collapse. Many of us reach a breaking point where distraction no longer works, where pain spills over into every corner of life. This is where transformation often begins, not in moments of triumph, but in moments of crisis. The story of a young monk illustrates this truth with clarity. His path was not born from peace, but from trauma, from the same restless suffering that haunts modern lives in America, Canada, and Europe. As a child, he was sensitive and thoughtful, but also burdened by a harsh inner voice. No matter what he achieved, it was never enough. If he studied well, he scolded himself for not being the best. If he helped others, he judged himself for not doing more. The inner critic was relentless, like a soldier on guard duty who never slept, barking orders and accusations at all hours. By the time he entered early adulthood, the voice had become unbearable. It told him he was unworthy, it told him he was broken, it told him he would never find peace. He tried to run from it. He drowned himself in busyness, filling every hour with tasks. He sought approval from teachers, friends, and mentors, hoping their praise might quiet the storm. For a brief moment, external validation seemed to help, but soon the critic returned, louder than before. Each attempt to escape only deepened the sense of failure. If he could not silence his own thoughts, what kind of person was he? Eventually, the strain broke his health. Sleepless nights left him hollow. His body ached as if carrying invisible weights. His emotions swung wildly from anger to despair. He felt like a prisoner trapped in his own mind, condemned by a voice he could neither silence nor ignore. In desperation, he turned to meditation, hoping it would be a cure. But at first it felt impossible. Sitting in silence only amplified the critic. The voice sneered that he was wasting time, that he was meditating wrong, that others were progressing faster. Instead of relief, he found deeper torment. The turning point came not in victory but in surrender. One night, overwhelmed by despair, he stopped trying to fight the voice. He sat in meditation and instead of resisting, he listened. What he discovered startled him. Beneath the harsh words was fear. Beneath the fear was pain. The critic was not a monster after all, but a wounded part of himself, trying desperately to protect him from rejection and failure. It was like a guard dog barking at every shadow, not because it hated him, but because it was terrified of being hurt again. This realization softened his heart. Instead of battling the critic, he began to treat it as a frightened child. When the voice shouted, he answered with gentleness. When it predicted doom, he offered reassurance. Slowly, the relationship shifted. The critic did not vanish, but it lost its power. It became one voice among many rather than the ruler of his inner world. Zen teachers describe this as meeting your demons with compassion rather than aggression. The more you fight the demon, the stronger it becomes. But when you turn toward it with understanding, it often dissolves into something else, grief, vulnerability, or a plea for love. The young monk discovered that his harshest enemy was in fact a part of himself longing to be heard. This was the beginning of his freedom. The lesson is universal. Trauma does not always appear as a dramatic event. Sometimes it takes the form of quiet self-hatred repeated for years. Sometimes it hides in perfectionism, in the belief that you must earn your right to exist by constant achievement. For many in Western societies, this silent trauma is widespread. The critic within is fueled by cultural messages of competition and comparison. You are told from childhood that you must be exceptional to matter. Over time, this becomes internalized as a relentless voice that never lets you rest. The monk's story reminds us that healing is not about silencing the voice, but changing our relationship to it. In psychological terms, this is called integration. In spiritual language, it is called compassion. In simple human terms, it means treating yourself as you would treat a dear friend who is suffering. You would not yell at them to be quiet. You would not demand perfection from them. You would listen, comfort, and encourage. Why then do we treat ourselves with less kindness than we would offer a stranger? There is a paradox here. The young monk discovered that the more he tried to destroy the critic, the more powerful it became. But when he accepted its presence and listened with compassion, the critic softened. What you resist persists. What you embrace transforms. This is not resignation, but wisdom. It is the recognition that even the darkest parts of ourselves are trying in their own distorted way to keep us safe. The turning point in his journey was not a dramatic enlightenment, but a quiet shift of perspective. He realized he did not have to identify with the critic. The voice could speak, but he did not have to obey. He was not the voice. He was the awareness, listening to it. This is a profound insight taught in both psychology and Zen practice. Thoughts are not facts. They are events passing through the mind, like clouds across the sky. The sky does not become the cloud. It holds the cloud and lets it pass. The monk carried this understanding into his daily life. When the critic reappeared, he greeted it with a smile. When anxiety tightened his chest, he placed his hand there and breathed gently until the tension eased. Over time, his nervous system began to settle. Sleep returned, energy increased, and most importantly, the sense of being at war with himself faded. He discovered an inner spaciousness where peace could grow. For modern audiences across America, Canada, and Europe, his story is a mirror. Many carry the same invisible trauma of self-judgment. Many have tried to outrun it through work, achievement, or distraction, only to find themselves more exhausted than before. The path out is not to run faster, but to stop running altogether. To sit, listen, and extend compassion to the very parts of ourselves we have long rejected. In this way, trauma becomes the doorway to transformation. The young monk did not become free in spite of his suffering, but because of it. His pain forced him to seek a deeper truth, and that truth revealed that he was never broken, only misled by the voice within. The same possibility is available to anyone willing to pause, to listen, and to meet themselves with the kindness they have always deserved. The young monk's turning point was his discovery that he was not the harsh voice in his head. This insight is both simple and revolutionary. Thoughts appear so quickly, so loudly, that we often mistake them for our very identity. They feel like the essence of who we are. When the mind says I am a failure, it seems undeniable. When it whispers I am not lovable, it feels like a statement carved in stone. Yet the truth is far more liberating. You are not your thoughts. You are the awareness that notices them. This shift is like stepping back from a movie screen. Imagine being inside a theater where the film is so overwhelming that you forget it is only a projection. The emotions pull you in, the drama feels real, and you react as if you are part of the story. But then someone reminds you that you are not trapped in the film. You are sitting in a seat watching light and shadows on a screen. The story can move you, but it is not your life. In the same way, thoughts are mental projections. They arise, they play their scenes, they fade. You, the awareness, remain untouched. Modern neuroscience supports this ancient insight. Brain scans show that thoughts are fleeting, electrical patterns arising and dissolving in fractions of seconds. Yet, when they repeat often, they carve grooves in the mind, creating habits of belief. These grooves feel like identity, but they are only patterns. The moment you see this, the grip loosens. A thought can still appear, but it no longer defines you. It becomes an event, not a sentence. In Zen practice, teachers often describe the mind as a sky and thoughts as clouds. Some clouds are dark and heavy, some are light and wispy, but none of them alter the sky itself. The sky allows them to pass without resistance. Likewise, awareness holds thoughts without becoming them. When you realize this, a new kind of freedom opens. You no longer need to argue with every thought, nor obey every demand. You can let them come and go like clouds drifting across an endless expanse. For people in modern societies, this understanding can feel like a lifeline. In cities like New York, London, or Toronto, the pace of life produces constant internal commentary. Did I do enough today? Am I falling behind? Will I ever achieve what I dream of? The thoughts loop endlessly. Without perspective, the loop feels like reality. But when you recognize that you are the witness of these thoughts, not their prisoner, the loop begins to lose power. You start to notice pauses between the voices, small spaces of silence where peace resides. Consider how this plays out in everyday life. A student sits down to take an exam and hears the thought, I am going to fail. In the past, he would believe it immediately, panic, and forget everything he studied. But now he recognizes it as just a thought, a pattern of fear. He breathes, lets it pass, and continues. A mother hears the thought, I am not a good parent, when her child misbehaves. Before, she would spiral into guilt. Now she notices the thought, thanks it for appearing, and chooses to respond with patience rather than self-judgment. These moments of recognition transform suffering into freedom. It is important to clarify that not being your thoughts does not mean denying them. The practice is not about suppressing or rejecting thoughts, but about changing the relationship with them. Instead of clinging to them as truth, you meet them with curiosity. What is this thought trying to tell me? Is it useful? Does it reflect reality, or just fear? In this way, you become the observer rather than the victim. Zen koans often point to this truth in paradoxical ways. A student once asked a master, "What is my true self?" The master replied, "Not what you are thinking right now." The point was not to give an intellectual answer, but to shift attention away from the thought stream to the awareness behind it. That awareness is the true self, spacious and free, untouched by passing ideas. In practical terms, one of the most effective ways to experience this separation is mindfulness meditation. Sit quietly, focus on your breath, and watch thoughts arise. Some will be pleasant, others disturbing, many repetitive. The key is not to fight them. Simply note thinking and return to the breath. Over time, you realize thoughts come and go on their own. You do not summon them, and you do not need to banish them. They are like guests passing through a house. You are the host, not the guest. The benefits extend beyond meditation. When you learn to see thoughts as events, you gain resilience. Insults do not sting as deeply because you notice the thought of hurt without becoming it. Fear does not paralyze because you see the fear thought without fusing with it. Even joy becomes purer because you can savor the moment without clinging to the story that it must last forever. Stories of transformation often begin with this recognition. A man in Vancouver struggled with severe anxiety for years. He believed every fearful thought was a prediction of disaster. Then he learned to label thoughts as mental events. The phrase, "just a thought," became his anchor. Slowly, panic attacks decreased. He realized that while he could not control the appearance of thoughts, he could choose how to relate to them. Another woman in Berlin carried a lifelong belief that she was unworthy of love. Therapy and meditation helped her see that this belief was only a repeated thought, not a fact. The thought still visits, but now she meets it with kindness. She whispers, "I see you, but you are not who I am." In this shift, relationships flourished because she no longer entered them from a place of hidden shame. Recognizing that you are not your thoughts also deepens compassion for others. When someone lashes out, you see their behavior as driven by their thoughts and pain, not by their essence. Just as your harsh inner critic is not your true self, neither is theirs. This perspective reduces judgment and opens space for empathy. The freedom that comes from this insight cannot be overstated. When you stop identifying with every thought, life becomes lighter. You realize that the mind will always produce commentary, just as the heart produces beats. But commentary does not define you. You are the awareness that notices the sky, that holds the clouds, the seat in the theater watching the film. From this place, suffering lessens and joy becomes more accessible. The young monk's turning point is therefore not only his story, but a universal invitation. Each of us has the power to step back from the voice in our head and see it for what it is, a passing thought. The critic, the fear, the doubt, the shame, these are visitors, not the owner of the house. The owner is awareness itself, vast, steady, and free. Once you taste this truth, the journey of healing takes a new direction. No longer are you fighting with yourself. You are learning to rest in the space beyond thoughts where peace has always been waiting. Once we begin to recognize that we are not our thoughts, the natural question arises, how do we strengthen this awareness in daily life? The mind has been rehearsing old patterns for years, even decades. To shift those patterns requires practice. Zen and mindfulness traditions offer a method both ancient and astonishingly simple. It does not involve complex rituals or elaborate philosophies. It comes down to 3 basic steps repeated again and again: focus, notice, return. The first step, focus, is the act of giving your attention a home. The mind is like a wild horse, restless and darting in every direction. Without something to anchor it, it runs wherever it pleases. Focus is the gentle tether that brings the horse back to the present moment. The breath is often chosen as this anchor because it is always available and always happening now. Each inhale and exhale is a reminder of life unfolding. To focus on the breath is to place your attention on a rhythm older than your worries, older than your plans, older even than your sense of self. At first, focus can feel slippery. You may take 2 breaths with awareness before your mind races toward work deadlines, past regrets, or imagined futures. This is natural. The goal is not to maintain perfect concentration, but to practice coming back. Think of it like holding a flashlight in a dark room. The beam may waver, but each time you steady it, the objects around you become clearer. The act of focusing, even briefly, begins to illuminate the cluttered corners of the mind. The second step, notice, is the heart of mindfulness. As you focus on the breath, you will inevitably notice thoughts, emotions, and sensations rising. Instead of treating them as intruders, you treat them as guests. You observe without judgment. A thought of fear appears, and you simply acknowledge fear. A memory surfaces, and you note remembering. The noticing is gentle, like labeling items as they pass on a conveyor belt. You do not need to grab them or push them away. You only need to see them clearly. This step is powerful because it creates distance between awareness and the thought. When you notice, you are no longer lost in the story. You are standing on the riverbank watching thoughts flow by like water. Some currents are strong, some gentle, but none carry you away unless you decide to jump in. The act of noticing transforms the relationship. Thoughts lose their grip because they are no longer fused with your identity. The third step, return, is the practice of coming home again and again. After noticing a thought, you guide your attention back to the breath, to the anchor of the present moment. This return is not failure, it is success. Each return strengthens the muscle of awareness. Imagine learning to ride a bicycle. You wobble, you fall, you get back on. Each return to balance is the practice itself. In the same way, meditation is not about eliminating distraction, but about returning from distraction. Focus, notice, return. This cycle may sound almost too simple, yet it contains profound wisdom. Life itself is a continual practice of wandering and returning. We wander into fear, then return to calm. We wander into distraction, then return to presence. We wander into judgment, then return to compassion. The skill developed in meditation extends into every moment of daily life. Take, for example, a stressful day at work in Chicago. Deadlines are approaching, your phone keeps buzzing, and your chest tightens. Normally, the stress would spiral, but with practice, you pause. You focus on one slow breath. You notice the racing thoughts: I cannot finish. I will disappoint everyone. You acknowledge them without resistance. Then you return to the breath. In that return, tension softens. You are still at work, the deadlines remain, but your relationship with them has changed. You are responding from presence rather than panic. Or consider a mother in Paris caring for 2 children. The house is noisy, dinner is cooking. Her mind is juggling a dozen tasks. She feels frustration rising. In the middle of the chaos, she remembers the 3 steps. She focuses on one breath while stirring the pot. She notices the thought, I cannot handle this. She labels it gently, then returns to the moment, continuing her task with more calm. The situation is the same, but her experience of it is transformed. These small shifts ripple outward. Over weeks and months of practice, the nervous system begins to settle. The body learns that it does not have to remain in constant alarm. The mind learns that thoughts are not commands but passing clouds. Relationships improve because you no longer react automatically to every emotion. Instead, you create space, respond with awareness, and return to what matters. The beauty of this practice is its accessibility. You do not need a special cushion or a secluded temple. You can practice while waiting in line, walking to work, or lying in bed at night. The breath is always with you. The 3 steps are always available. Focus, notice, return. Even one cycle can bring relief in moments of stress. Repeated many times, it reshapes the landscape of the mind. Zen masters emphasize that the simplicity of the practice is the point. The mind craves complexity, searching for secret formulas or advanced techniques. But the essence is direct. As one saying goes, before enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. What changes is not the activity, but the quality of awareness. By focusing, noticing, and returning, even ordinary tasks become moments of presence. Washing dishes becomes a meditation. Listening to a friend becomes deeper. Walking down a street becomes alive with detail. Modern science has begun to measure what practitioners have known for centuries. Studies show that regular meditation lowers blood pressure, improves concentration, and reduces anxiety. Brain scans reveal structural changes in areas linked to attention and compassion. But beyond the data, the lived experience is what matters most. People report feeling lighter, more patient, more connected to life itself. These are not mystical powers, but natural outcomes of training the mind to return again and again to the present. There will be resistance. The critic may appear and declare you are doing it wrong. The restless mind may insist you do not have time. But each return, no matter how brief, is an act of rebellion against that inner tyranny. Each return is a statement that you are more than your thoughts, more than your fears, more than your distractions. You are awareness itself, capable of choosing where to rest. In the end, the 3 steps are not just a meditation technique. They are a way of living. Focus on what matters. Notice what arises without judgment. Return to the present moment. Practiced consistently, these steps lead to a life that feels less like a frantic chase and more like a steady unfolding. Peace does not arrive as a distant goal. It reveals itself in the very act of returning. When people first learn to focus, notice, and return, they often discover something unexpected. Beneath the noise of constant thought lies a reservoir of unprocessed pain. For years, it may have been hidden under distractions, achievements, or sheer busyness. But when silence deepens, when attention becomes steady, the pain surfaces. Old wounds, forgotten memories, raw emotions rise like shadows long ignored. This is the moment when many retreat. They fear that facing pain will overwhelm them. Yet paradoxically, this is the very doorway to healing. Zen practice teaches that pain is not an enemy to be defeated, but a messenger to be understood. The common response to discomfort is either to fight it or to flee from it. We tense against grief, we suppress anger, we run from fear. But these strategies keep the cycle alive. Suppressed pain does not vanish. It hides in the body, in the nervous system, in unconscious reactions. To break the cycle, we must meet pain directly, but not with violence. We must meet it with tenderness, as if cradling a fragile creature in our hands. Imagine holding a small, injured bird. Its wings tremble, its heartbeat races, its eyes are wide with fear. If you grip it too tightly, you will harm it. If you throw it away, it will perish. The only way is to hold it gently, providing safety without force, presence without judgment. This is the attitude Zen invites us to take toward our own suffering. When grief rises, hold it like the bird. When shame appears, hold it. When fear shakes within you, hold it. Not to fix or destroy, but simply to acknowledge and comfort. In modern Western culture, this approach feels radical. From childhood, many are taught to toughen up, to push through, to treat vulnerability as weakness. Men are told not to cry, women are told not to be too emotional, children are told to be brave. As a result, countless adults walk around carrying fragile creatures inside. Old wounds never held, young selves never comforted. They compensate with ambition, perfectionism, or denial, but the creature still trembles in the dark. Facing pain with tenderness does not mean indulging it endlessly. It means creating enough safety for it to be seen and processed. A woman in Montreal once described how years of anxiety melted when she stopped treating her panic attacks as signs of failure. Instead, she placed her hand on her chest during each attack and whispered, "It is okay, I am here." The attacks did not disappear overnight, but the fear of them lessened. Over time, the fragile creature calmed because it was finally being held. A man in Berlin shared how unresolved grief from losing his father haunted him for decades. He avoided the subject, buried himself in work, and distracted himself with travel. But the grief surfaced each time he was alone. Eventually, through meditation, he allowed himself to sit with the grief, as if with a child. He cried freely, something he had not done since the funeral. In that release, he discovered not only sorrow but love. The fragile creature of grief revealed the depth of his bond. By holding it instead of rejecting it, he honored both his pain and his father's memory. This practice is not about glorifying suffering. It is about unlocking the energy trapped within it. Pain demands attention. When ignored, it screams louder through symptoms and destructive behaviors. When acknowledged, it begins to dissolve, often revealing surprising gifts. Fear can reveal the desire for safety. Anger can reveal the longing for respect. Grief can reveal the depth of love. By holding the fragile creature, we allow these deeper truths to emerge. In practical terms, facing pain with tenderness can be cultivated through mindful presence. When a difficult emotion arises, pause, take a slow breath. Place a hand on the body where the sensation is strongest, perhaps the chest, the stomach, the throat. Instead of labeling the emotion as bad, imagine it as that small injured bird. How would you hold it? How would you soothe it? This simple act of visualization transforms the inner landscape. The nervous system shifts from resistance to compassion. Some people fear that if they face their pain, it will consume them. But the opposite is usually true. Running from pain keeps it powerful. Facing it with kindness weakens its grip. The monk's story reminds us of this truth. His harsh inner critic softened only when he listened with compassion. Likewise, your own wounds soften when you meet them with care. Over time, this practice builds resilience. You learn that you can survive strong emotions. You discover that fear does not kill, grief does not destroy, shame does not erase you. They are intense, yes, but bearable when held with gentleness. This confidence changes everything. Instead of dreading the next wave of pain, you begin to trust your ability to ride it. Pain becomes less frightening, and freedom grows. The implications extend to relationships as well. When you practice holding your own fragile creature, you become more capable of holding others. A friend's tears no longer make you uncomfortable. A partner's anger no longer feels like a threat. You recognize their pain as a fragile creature too deserving of tenderness. Compassion deepens, and connections become more authentic. In a broader sense, societies could transform if this practice were embraced. Imagine classrooms where children are taught not only to solve math problems but also to hold their emotions with kindness. Imagine workplaces where stress is not shamed but acknowledged with compassion. Imagine communities where grief is shared rather than hidden. The fragile creatures would no longer suffer alone in the dark. They would be held collectively, and collective healing would unfold. Zen reminds us that even the most ordinary act can carry profound meaning. Holding pain like a fragile creature is not dramatic. It is not about chanting mantras or performing rituals. It is about a subtle shift of attitude from resistance to care, from judgment to compassion. Yet this subtle shift changes everything. It transforms suffering into a doorway, vulnerability into strength, and fear into intimacy with life. The journey is not easy. Old habits of suppression will return. The inner critic may mock your tenderness. Cultural conditioning may urge you to toughen up. But each time you choose to hold rather than fight, you rewrite the story. Each act of compassion toward your own pain is an act of liberation. You prove to yourself that you are not defined by wounds, but by the love you bring to them. In the end, pain is not a punishment. It is a messenger knocking at the door. When you open the door and hold the fragile creature with care, the message becomes clear. You are capable of healing, you are worthy of love, and you have always been enough. In the last section, we explored the image of holding pain like a fragile creature, treating our suffering not with violence but with tenderness. This naturally leads to the broader transformation at the heart of Zen practice and modern psychology alike, the movement from self-criticism to self-compassion. It is one of the most profound shifts a person can make. It changes not only how you relate to your own mind, but also how you show up in the world. For many in Western societies, self-criticism is almost a default mode of existence. From early school years, children are compared, graded, and measured against one another. Mistakes are marked in red ink, successes praised only when they outshine others. The message seeps in quietly: your worth is conditional based on performance. By adulthood, this external conditioning has become an internal voice. You do not need a teacher hovering over your shoulder because the critic is already in your head, pointing out failures, reminding you of shortcomings, and insisting that you must do more. At first glance, self-criticism can seem useful. Many believe it motivates improvement. If I did not criticize myself, they say, I would never grow. Yet research shows the opposite. Constant self-criticism erodes resilience, fuels anxiety, and often leads to paralysis rather than progress. When you live under the lash of an inner whip, you may run faster for a while, but eventually you collapse. Growth born from fear is fragile. Growth nurtured by compassion is sustainable. Consider the example of learning a new skill. A young man in Toronto tries to learn guitar. Each time he fumbles a chord, the critic shouts, "You are hopeless, you will never be good at this." The result is discouragement. Practice feels painful, and he eventually gives up. Now imagine the same scenario with self-compassion. Each mistake is met with understanding. Everyone struggles at first, he tells himself. With patience, I will improve. The result is persistence, and persistence is what leads to mastery. The difference is not talent, but the tone of the inner voice. Self-compassion does not mean avoiding responsibility or indulging in laziness. It means acknowledging mistakes without equating them with worthlessness. It means speaking to yourself as you would to a close friend. If a friend confided that she failed an exam, you would not respond, "You are stupid and hopeless." You would say, "I know this hurts, but it does not define you. You can learn from it and try again." Self-compassion is offering that same kindness inward. The practice begins with awareness. Notice the language of the critic. Pay attention to the words that echo in your mind when you fall short. Do they sound harsh, belittling, cruel? If so, pause and ask, would I say this to someone I care about? Most often the answer is no. This recognition opens a door. If it is unacceptable to speak this way to others, why is it acceptable to speak this way to yourself? Replacing criticism with compassion can be as simple as changing the inner dialogue. Instead of saying, "I am such a failure," try, "I made a mistake, and mistakes are part of being human." Instead of "I am weak for feeling sad," try "Sadness is a natural response to loss, and I deserve care when I feel it." These shifts may feel awkward at first. The critic has had decades to establish its script, but with repetition, new scripts take root. Zen practice provides a supportive frame for this shift. In meditation, when distracting thoughts arise, you do not scold yourself. You notice and return. Each return is an act of compassion. Instead of punishing distraction, you treat it as part of the process. Over time, this attitude spreads beyond meditation. Daily mistakes, emotional outbursts, moments of forgetfulness are no longer seen as proof of failure, but as opportunities to return to awareness. Compassion becomes a habit rather than a rare exception. Stories of transformation illustrate the power of this shift. A woman in London lived for years with an eating disorder fueled by relentless self-criticism. She believed that only by punishing herself into discipline could she gain control. Therapy introduced her to self-compassion. Slowly, she learned to speak kindly to her body, to listen rather than attack. The disorder did not vanish overnight, but as compassion grew, the grip of self-hatred loosened. Health returned, and with it a new sense of freedom. A father in Chicago struggled with anger at his children. Each time he lost patience, the critic attacked. "You are a terrible parent." His shame deepened the anger, creating a cycle. Through mindfulness training, he began to practice self-compassion. When anger arose, he acknowledged it, forgave himself, and tried again. Instead of spiraling in shame, he learned from each episode. Over time, his children noticed the change. He became more patient, more present, not because he never made mistakes, but because he stopped letting mistakes define him. Self-compassion also has a profound social effect. People who treat themselves with kindness tend to treat others with kindness. When you are harsh with yourself, you often project that harshness outward, judging others quickly. When you are compassionate inwardly, empathy flows more easily. Compassion is contagious. A workplace where leaders practice self-compassion creates a culture of understanding. A family where parents model it raises children who know their worth, does not depend on perfection. From a scientific perspective, self-compassion reduces stress hormones, strengthens the immune system, and increases emotional resilience. From a spiritual perspective, it aligns with the Zen teaching that suffering softens when embraced rather than resisted. From a practical human perspective, it simply makes life gentler, kinder, and more livable. Yet many resist self-compassion because they mistake it for weakness. They believe that without the critic's whip, they will become complacent. The opposite is true. Compassion provides a foundation of safety that encourages exploration. When you are not terrified of failure, you take more risks, you learn more, you grow more. True strength comes not from self-punishment, but from self-support. The journey from self-criticism to self-compassion is not quick. The critic will not vanish overnight, but each moment of kindness weakens its dominance. Each time you choose to comfort rather than condemn, you build a new pattern. Over time, compassion becomes not just a practice, but an identity. You no longer see yourself as broken, but as human. Imperfect, yes, but worthy of love and capable of growth. The fragile creature of pain we discussed earlier needs exactly this. Not a critic's voice shouting at it to toughen up, but a compassionate hand holding it gently. When you give yourself this compassion, you create the conditions for healing. You also create the conditions for joy. Joy does not thrive in an atmosphere of constant attack. It blooms in kindness. Ultimately, the shift from self-criticism to self-compassion is not about becoming someone else. It is about remembering who you already are beneath the harsh voices. It is about returning to the natural capacity for kindness that was present in you before conditioning taught you otherwise. The critic was learned. Compassion is innate. When you return to it, you return to your truest self. Shifting from self-criticism to self-compassion is not only an inner exercise, it must find its expression in the fabric of daily life. Otherwise, compassion risks remaining an abstract idea rather than a lived reality. The true test of this transformation lies in the ordinary moments, the way you treat yourself when the alarm clock rings too early, the way you respond when you miss a deadline, the way you handle disappointment, conflict, or fatigue. Zen teachings remind us that enlightenment is not separate from everyday tasks. It is found in the dishes, in the conversations, in the steps we take on familiar streets. To ground self-compassion in real life, it helps to think of practice in 4 domains: the body, the mind, relationships, and work. Each offers a stage where the critic often dominates and where compassion can bring healing. The first domain is the body. In modern societies, the body is frequently treated as a tool to be controlled, pushed, and perfected. People exercise not out of joy, but out of punishment. They diet not to nourish, but to conform. The critic is loud here, pointing out flaws in the mirror, comparing shapes and sizes to impossible ideals. Practical compassion means relating to the body differently. Instead of forcing it through exhausting routines, you learn to listen to its signals. A compassionate choice might mean resting when tired, rather than pushing through another workout. It might mean savoring a meal slowly instead of rushing while scrolling on a phone. It might mean treating sleep as a sacred act of renewal instead of something to cut short in the name of productivity. These choices sound small, yet they accumulate into a relationship of trust with the body. The second domain is the mind. Thoughts race, worries loop, and the critic thrives in this environment. Daily life offers countless chances to shift the relationship. A practical method is the 3-step cycle introduced earlier: focus, notice, return. You can practice this not only on a meditation cushion, but also in the middle of a busy day. While waiting at a stoplight, instead of scrolling through your phone, you can focus on 3 deep breaths. When you catch yourself lost in rumination about something you said yesterday, you can notice it, label it as remembering, and return to the present. Over time, these small acts weaken the critic's grip and strengthen awareness. The third domain is relationships. This is often where the critic spills over. The way you judge yourself tends to mirror the way you judge others. If you are harsh with yourself, you are more likely to be harsh with your partner, your children, your co-workers. By practicing compassion inwardly, you naturally soften outwardly. A practical application might be pausing before reacting in anger. Instead of snapping at a partner for forgetting something, you take a breath and ask, "How would I want to be treated if I made this mistake?" Or when a child struggles with schoolwork, you resist the urge to push harder and instead encourage with kindness. These responses not only nurture relationships, but also reinforce your own practice. Each time you choose compassion outwardly, you remind yourself of its power inwardly. The fourth domain is work. Many people in the United States, Canada, and Europe spend the majority of their waking hours in workplaces fueled by competition and productivity. Here, the critic often feels justified. You must work faster, achieve more, prove your worth. But compassion can be applied even in high-pressure environments. It might look like taking short breaks to breathe during the day. It might mean setting boundaries and recognizing that overwork leads not to excellence but to burnout. It might mean speaking kindly to yourself after a presentation that did not go perfectly, recognizing the effort rather than obsessing over flaws. These practices do not make you less effective, they make you more sustainable. A compassionate worker is more resilient, more creative, and less prone to collapse. Practical applications also extend to how you use technology. The phone, as we explored earlier, acts like a mirror that often distorts self-worth. Compassion means setting limits. Perhaps you decide to check social media only at certain times rather than letting it dictate your mood throughout the day. Perhaps you practice gratitude before opening your phone in the morning, reminding yourself of what is already enough before being bombarded with comparisons. These small adjustments shift technology from master to servant. There is also the realm of community. Compassion practiced privately can ripple into public life. Volunteering, offering support to neighbors, or simply listening deeply to someone without judgment are ways of extending inner compassion outward. A man in New York once described how his meditation practice changed the way he interacted with strangers. Instead of rushing past the homeless man on the corner, he stopped to greet him, sometimes bringing food. This act did not solve homelessness, but it shifted both men's days. Compassion became tangible in the streets, not just in his thoughts. Another practical area is self-reflection. Journaling can be a tool to reinforce compassion. Instead of writing lists of failures, you can write notes of encouragement to yourself. You might reflect each evening on one way you treated yourself with kindness. Over time, the journal becomes evidence against the critic's narrative, proof that you are capable of care. Compassion can also be embedded in daily rituals, drinking tea slowly in silence, walking in nature without headphones, or lighting a candle at the end of the day. These moments anchor awareness and remind you that life is more than deadlines and demands. Rituals need not be elaborate to be meaningful. What matters is the intention behind them: to pause, to care, to return to presence. Practical compassion also means allowing imperfection. No practice is flawless. There will be days when the critic roars louder, when you fall into old habits of judgment. The temptation will be to criticize yourself for failing at compassion. This is where the deepest lesson lies. Even the failure to be compassionate is an opportunity for compassion. Instead of saying, "I cannot even practice kindness correctly," you can say, "Today was hard, and that is human. I can try again tomorrow." This simple reframe keeps the path open. The societal implications are profound. Imagine schools where teachers model self-compassion, creating classrooms where mistakes are treated as opportunities rather than humiliations. Imagine healthcare systems where doctors and nurses practice self-care, reducing burnout and offering more humane treatment. Imagine political cultures where compassion tempers debate. These may sound idealistic, but they begin with individuals applying compassion practically in their own spheres. Daily life is filled with moments of choice. Each choice is a chance to strengthen either the critic or compassion. You may choose to scroll through your phone and compare yourself, or you may choose to breathe and return. You may choose to berate yourself for a mistake, or you may choose to learn gently. You may choose to push your body beyond its limits, or you may choose to rest. None of these choices are trivial. They shape the atmosphere of your life. Over time, they shape your identity. In the end, practical compassion is not about dramatic gestures. It is about consistency. It is about weaving kindness into the fabric of ordinary life until it becomes natural. The critic thrives on repetition, on the daily drip of negative messages. Compassion must also be repeated daily. With each repetition, the voice of kindness grows stronger. Self-compassion may begin as a practice, but eventually, it becomes a way of being. You wake up and greet yourself with gentleness instead of judgment. You move through the day with awareness rather than hurry. You meet mistakes with patience, successes with gratitude, relationships with empathy. And when you lay down to sleep at night, you rest not in the critic's shadow, but in compassion's embrace. We have traveled through many layers of the human experience: the restless chase for validation in a digital world, the body crying for help beneath constant pressure, the voice of trauma hidden as an inner critic, the realization that we are not our thoughts, the simple cycle of focus, notice, and return, the act of holding pain like a fragile creature, and the transformation that arises when self-criticism gives way to self-compassion. Each step reveals the same essential truth. Peace does not wait for us in the distant future. It is here now, accessible in the way we choose to relate to our own minds and bodies. Modern life in America, Canada, and Europe pushes us towards speed, competition, and constant comparison. We are told to keep moving, to stay connected, to achieve more. Yet beneath this noise, the wisdom of Zen whispers something radically different. It invites us to pause, to breathe, to recognize that worth is not earned but inherent. It reminds us that the critic is not our identity, that our thoughts do not define us, that our wounds are not signs of weakness but openings to compassion. The practices described are not abstract philosophies meant for monasteries alone. They are practical tools for daily life. Focusing on the breath while waiting in traffic, noticing thoughts during a tense meeting, returning to presence while cooking dinner, holding grief like a fragile bird, speaking gently to yourself after a mistake. These are small acts, but they ripple outward. Over time, they create a life where compassion is not an exception, but a foundation. The call to action is clear. Begin where you are. You do not need to wait until life is perfect, until the critic is silent, until you feel ready. Compassion begins in this very moment. Take one breath with awareness. Offer yourself one kind word. Treat one painful memory with tenderness. Each step matters. Each return strengthens the habit of freedom. And remember, compassion is not only for yourself. The way you hold your own pain will influence the way you hold others. When you stop judging yourself harshly, you stop projecting judgment onto the people around you. When you speak gently inwardly, you speak gently outwardly. A society of individuals practicing self-compassion becomes a society capable of deeper empathy and connection. The change begins inside but never stays there. So as you move forward, ask yourself, will you continue feeding the critic, or will you nurture the voice of compassion? Will you keep running from pain, or will you hold it like the fragile creature it island? Will you believe every thought that arises, or will you rest as the awareness that sees them come and go? These choices shape not only your inner world, but the world we share together. Let this be the moment you choose differently. Breathe, notice, return. Hold your own heart with tenderness. In doing so, you do not only free yourself, you help create a culture where compassion is possible, where healing is honored, and where peace is no longer a distant dream but a living reality.